now I got them. Okay. And then just be careful. There's some wires back here. Just don't want you tripping.
Yeah, with type stuff. Oh, you don't have tables for people to eat at. Ginny, what are you doing here? Are you trying to make me nervous?
Am I trying to what?
Make me nervous? Why did you come?
Oh, should I go sit in the back then?
No, you can stay up front. I'll let you stay.
Here, so we can plug you in.
He's gonna tell me I'm being nervous.
Oh, it's okay. You come up in the talk.
I warned you I was coming.
Did you?
Are you a customer?
I don't have time to. Oh, she's a very long-time customer.
That means I'm old, right?
No, I've only been around 6.5 years.
That's right. I didn't open my mouth. I just said.
I certainly didn't expect. What was it? I know one of my employees told me I was giving a talk Wednesday night. I'm like, how do you find out about this? Who knows it? Who knows about this? She goes, everybody. And she sends me a picture from the source. I'm like, oh.
And after school? And where do you stay?
Okay. I want to know what samples.
Yeah. No, you have to pay for it?
Well, I thought well, you have your slideshow, so maybe I should, do you want me to move the table or do you want to put the samples out when you get to the
So I have basically different samples for different moments.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of chocolate because I'm talking more about bakery than
That's
chocolate.
okay. Why don't we just put everything on the table?
And I have spoons.
I think this needs to go into your... Oh, you brought, I did bring napkins.
Okay. I have more if you run out. 70 cents just for show. Some are just for show. But we can always break them out if we need to.
But do you know
I hope you don't have a no-nut policy.
No, as long as you tell people,
Yeah.
then we're fine.
No, I know, but if there's
And if you have a helper or you want to like pass samples out at certain times, I can prompt you.
Yeah, I can do that.
So they're not used to having conversations itself. They probably knew English well, but not used to having conversations.
So we understand when I think Sophie's got the schedule, and then I think I'll be passing around.
I know where it is.
I think you have.
I mean, that's how far have you been here?
Completely up to you. I project.
No, I know, it's across.
Oh, but you have.
Yeah, we're streaming. Yeah. So what I'll do is
I thought,
You can mic me if you want to.
well, we can.
You can't. Okay. Then I can carry it around.
We have this, and then we have a handheld. So I'll make sure there's a
Yeah,
handheld
either way
here.
works. I don't stay in one place very well.
This is on if you want to get up and walk around.
Perfect.
That's there.
Spoons, all handle side up.
Jules, somebody asked me what my favorite thing was at the shop.
They can't speak like their language.
The Paramount in
Yes.
England and here.
When they grew up,
There's no from the church.
most of the families were
I didn't bring you this here.
That's true about
I didn't understand much of it.
Someday I'll bring you this here.
So this needs to get connected so we can get you into the projector.
Okay, so we just have to figure out where it goes in. It looks like that's an HDMI source.
This one?
This one. Yeah, that looks HDMI to me.
I can find it.
Perfect. Oh, that's easy. Oh, into your Wi-Fi. Oh, I started on my desktop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I leave. I don't rely on networked drives. Networked drives are far too dangerous. Something like this.
It says it's not connected.
Yeah, it was his birthday, what?
coffee this morning, but I had to run out really fast.
I will get it ready. Absolutely.
When you're done, will probably work for me.
All right, so
I
let's
should
get-
probably get started soon. I'm guessing.
Yes,
People are
let
probably
me get your
expecting me to
water,
do
and then
that.
I'll do an introduction.
Okay,
So
perfect.
I'll grab the water,
Yep.
you get your,
I'll find a slideshow.
You know, we're having a big annual board meeting that everybody can on Tuesday night at 7. It's on my calendar.
I've been giving out free publicity, I think I need.
I have plenty of samples.
Wasn't hard to do.
Let's see, how do I go into slideshow presentation? I haven't given a slideshow in a very long time, so.
I don't know how many times this is mine, right?
and I'll just, ready for me to get into my introduction?
I have,
I catch up in the summer usually.
I have 19 of my So right now I'm doing air
And you brought the youngest viewer in the crowd. Excellent.
We might also be the shortest attenders.
It happens. The two often go hand in hand.
Look who's that young man.
I know, I was way younger back then.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm trying to stand where I can. Okay, anyway. My name's Kira, and I'm on staff here at the library, and I run the Brown Bag Learning Series, which this is one installment of. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. If you would please silence your cell phones if you have them. There will be a time for questions. Do you want to take questions afterwards, Jules, or whenever? So if you have a question, raise your hand. There are evaluation forms in the back. If you would please fill those out after the program. It helps us to know, what you like, what you're thinking, and also ideas for future programs. We look at every single evaluation form. So thank you for that. Speaking of future programs, next month's Brown Bag Learning Series is going to be Framingham Police Officer Deborah Now with a self-defense, brief self-defense program showing us some basic moves for self-defense. On Monday, December 12th, we have the second installment of our sustainability series, and that's going to be on solar power. Buying, leasing, available tax credits, that kind of thing. So you can check our newsletter, and we've got a bunch of flyers in the back. Check our website for all of those things. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jules Remenar, our presenter for today. He is the Chief Recipe Designer and Chocolatier at Dulce de Leche Gelato Cafe. Jules is going to tell us about his passion for and his journey towards learning the art and science of creating sweet confections and other things too. So please help me welcome Jules.
Thank you. Well, this is like probably one of 10 talks I could have given. Is this thing working? Not too well.
You have to hold it close to your mouth.
Really close, like that? Hey, that works. Okay. Don't be surprised if I fade in and out. Microphones aren't my thing. Let's see. So I really wasn't sure what to talk about exactly today. Any technical talk would probably be a lot easier done in my chocolate room, and I do that for people, kind of by private engagement. It's a little bit more of a history of how we became and how we kind of grew and survived COVID to some extent, and how our menu came to be what it is today, because it really came up from nothing. And of course, Sam and I started this, and the idea came about, oh boy, it's going on 8 years ago now, and I'll kind of go through that part a little bit, and then just kind of how the business came to exist and evolve. And of course, what you see on your left is a very typical Argentinian dinner. So Sam was from Argentina, and we had gone there in their summer, our winter, as a February break in 2015. And favorite dinner there, beef ribs, which are cut completely different. You can't get them cut this way in the U.S. Baby pig and ribeye, which they call bife de chorizo there. And really, the thing in Argentina, they pretty much salt meat, cook it over hardwood charcoal, and serve it with some wine and some greens, and if you're lucky, some bread to mop up the juices, and that's pretty much a meal. We also took the trip out to the Aconcagua, which is a fun one because I thought of naming one of our pyramid-shaped chocolates over there the Aconcagua after this, but turns out that that's already a trademarked name, so that's often a problem. Okay. Now, really, I guess you could say one of the highlights of the trip, there were many highlights, but was going to Fredo, which is a gelato shop. Now, Sam and I had been to many gelato shops in the world. Our honeymoon was in Prague and Vienna, and she was always looking for the perfect Sambajan. So Sambajan is really cooked egg yolks with sweet Marsala wine and sugar, and then you add that in. If you see the Italian dessert menus, it's the one that looks like Zabaglione on the menu. But this is poured in there. It has kind of a rum raisin taste, and she was always looking for this. We couldn't find it the way she liked it in Boston, San Francisco, Vienna, probably several other places. A lot of the gelato you have is very kind of bland and boring. And we wondered why that was, but Fredo, it was absolutely delicious. And they had these in Argentina. I had been out of work at that point for about a year and a half, and was kind of getting bored with all the hobbies she was trying, and so the idea came up of a business as a productive hobby, and said I'd help out with that. And so said, well, hey honey, how about we buy a gelato machine and make some gelato to sell at the farmers markets? So we bought the handy dandy machine on the left, and we tried some recipes from books and the internet, and turns out you can't get a license to make gelato at home to sell. And you can't sell without a license and get into farmers markets or any of that stuff. Gelato, any frozen dessert made with dairy, is considered a potentially hazardous food because it can grow, oh boy, I forget which bacteria it is. Anyway, it has to be made in a licensed commercial kitchen, tested randomly for bacteria every month. We pay about $195 a month for that service. And so the question's coming, where are you going to rent space to make gelato? And this was in 2015, before people started building a lot. You hear about the shared kitchen spaces now. I think even if there was shared kitchen space, to get a gelato maker in and pasteurizer and all that kind of stuff, the utilities are so specific that it's hard to just go plug it in somewhere and work. So we found the place at 5 Edgel Road in Framingham Center. And probably the biggest decision on this one was we had teenage kids, and we wanted a place that was close to home where we could check up on them all the time, because we knew they wouldn't want to be at the shop, but couldn't be at the shop all the time. And it's a 10-minute walk from our house, which was good. The size of it, the space seemed manageable. Most spaces were too huge, and the plaza owners were putting a lot of money and effort into improving the plaza. It's not really a plaza that a lot of people go into. And the question is, how do you go from an empty shell to being a functioning gelato maker and shop? And a very important point, neither of us had any business experience at all. So we sent Sam off. I was still working a day job at that point. And so Sam went off to a gelato class in New York that they were having. It was called Gelato Technology Institute, and she learned to use the machines. She got a book of recipes. She still didn't love her favorite flavor there, the Sambajan that they did. And the host facility for the class, though, was a gelato shop / bakery designer and outfitter. And so she took some time to meet with him, and they of course said, well, give us the floor plan for the space you rent, and we will design a gelato shop and equipment for what you want to do. And you just have to buy the equipment from them. It's just, of course, very expensive. So since she completely loved the gelato from there. She said, well, why don't I go to Buenos Aires and have another one in Spanish from somebody else? And unfortunately, that class focused pretty heavily on the use of commercial powders, premixes, flavor pastes, and prepackaged flavors. Which we've come to learn is how about 90% of the gelato in the US is made, and about 70% even in Italy, and that's where you get the gelato that's a little bit more bland than if you're pasteurizing your own mix from milk and sugar and everything else. She did, however, guilt them into making a sandwichon for her with egg yolks and sweet marsala wine, and liked it a lot. She also had a friend there who has a bakery, and I know I got to visit that bakery while I was there. One of the products we have is inspired by that trip. But while she was there, went and learned about making croissants and other things from her friend with the bakery. Okay, so as soon as you announce that you're going to have a gelato shop and be a gelato maker, everybody wants to sell you stuff. And they particularly want to sell you powders, goops, flavor pastes, and mix-ins. Now, the benefit of powders, goops, flavor pastes, and mix-ins is you don't have to pasteurize them. That's a loophole that the government allows for not having to have a pasteurizer and getting it licensed every year. So it does definitely make life cheaper because pasteurization is rather electricity and heat intensive and cooling intensive and expensive. So they sent us samples. We practiced at home. We practiced our own recipes. The stuff made with the pastes are getting kind of boring. Practiced cooking milk and cream and powdered sugar. And then again, I'm still a scientist and still working in the lab at this point. And my boss at the time, he's one of these creative genius types. He's started many companies and has many, many patents and very successful. And he goes, hey, Jules, you know, there are all these people out there who can't digest lactose. Why don't you just break the lactose and call it gelato for everyone? So I said, oh, that sounds kind of like a cool idea. And so we broke the lactose with enzyme, and it turned out to be the best tasting of all the gelato we made. So we wound up applying that to everything, and we still do that to this day. And as far as I can tell, we're the world's only lactose-free gelato, dairy gelato maker. Okay, so, you know, hey, honey, how are we going to make money in the winter? So everybody says, well, it's not a problem. I mean, people eat more ice cream in New England than in the winter than anywhere else in the world, but they eat ice cream in front of their fireplace, watching TV, not out at restaurants. Mostly that's bought at grocery stores. So that doesn't really help you that much. And so, like, well, let's play up the Argentinian thing and bring in some of our favorite things. Now on the left we have alfajores, and I'm not sure how best to distribute these here, but I do have in little cups, if you want to pass, if you want to pass them around, a quarter each of our chocolate alfajores. And then on the right-hand side, you might as well pass out the turtle cups too while you're there. So if you take one from the left and one from the right, you'll have a turtle and an alfajor. So alfajores are the most popular cookies in South America. I had never heard of one until the day I first went to Sam's condo. And her mom had visited a few months before, and unfortunately they were already starting to mold, being 5-6 months old. And while we wanted to import these, we discovered that they weren't really suitable for import. By the time you put them on a boat and bring them, they're already getting pretty close to the end of the shelf life. Now we use an Argentinian style Dulce Leche in ours that's made in Miami that has a lower water activity and it doesn't really grow mold. So we still put a pretty short shelf life on them just to be safe, but I haven't actually seen any of them mold ever. Of course, they don't usually last very long on our shelves. The one that looks kind of like a cone with a spiky tip over there is technically called an avanette. So these are made by a company called Havana, but a lot of people make the alfajores now. But Havana has these shops all over Argentina, any airport you go to, but in the cities as well, and they're like little cafes. You can get the alfajores, you can get their conitos as they call them, and the conito is like dulce de leche on top of a little cookie coated in chocolate. And actually, our version of it over here, this is what I had wanted to call the Aconcagua. I've got wrapped in blue foil. Same thing, but in a more elegant kind of molded shape, more of a pyramid. And we use much higher quality chocolate too, being chocolatiers. So said, okay, well, we're going to be here all the time, and we drink cappuccino at home. We love it. We have a great maker. But if we're going to be there all the time, we should have a cappuccino machine. And well, if we're going to sell cappuccino, we should have some croissants and cookies too, and we should import stuff from Argentina. But then, you know, shoot, it seems these things are really hard to import and don't keep very long. So, you know, hey honey, I'll take an online chocolate course and reverse engineer the conitos since we can't import them. And so that became the beginning of my love of chocolate making. And so that first picture you had seen on the first page of us sitting on the bench there on Isla was taken within an hour of this photo shoot. That, of course, is not Sam. Sam was taking the picture. That's the person who was working in the warehouse tour at the Bruichladdich distillery. And so I had to go to Scotland on business for a conference, and Sam loved castles and I loved Scotch, so it seemed like the ideal getaway for a week, and extended it out. And she set up kind of the dream excursion to Isla for 2 days, which makes my favorite Scotch. And we did a barrel tasting at Bruichladdich, and one of the things they did here is they took that cup or little glass of the Scotch and added a little bit of water to it and showed the oils separating out. And I had just started the chocolate class, so my first thought was, you know, someday I'm going to make a truffle with this and get all that flavor from the oils in there. And that was the origin, or at least the origin of the idea of making the whiskey truffles. And really from that point, I kind of got this like geeky enthusiasm about making chocolate, and took the class very seriously. And we decided we would also be a chocolate producer. And still to this day, I continue to evolve the recipes. I do have a lovely ganache that if we have time at the end, I'll pipe into cups for you as well.
But about the distillery, why did you choose that one? Because they're just all over the place there with different.
We went to every distillery on the island of Isla. And that one happened to have really nice barrel room tours. Literally, we went to everyone on the island of Isla. There were only 8.
How many whiskey truffles do you have now?
I actually only make about 6 flavors most of the time, most years, and I make them only around Christmas time and around the poet Robert Burns' birthday. So I do more of the scotches around Robert Burns' birthday.
Appropriate.
Yep, very appropriate. And I do mostly American whiskeys. I call it the American Collection for Christmas and Father's Day. The reason for that is when I sell whiskeys with Scotch names on them, nobody buys them. And when I make bourbons with American names on them, everybody buys them, and they line up. So that's, I had a love of Scotch, but I also have a love of bourbon and rye, and people are more likely to buy the bourbon and rye. Go figure. So it's what we do. You know, you adapt your business to where the market is, sometimes more than just your personal preferences. So we opened very quietly. I think Susan was one of the first people to discover us. But you know, we knew nothing about business. We didn't know about chambers of commerce. We didn't know about ribbon cutting. So we didn't ask anybody to do any of that. We never did any of that. We just started making gelato and opened the door, and people started wandering in.
What year was that?
What is that?
What year?
That was 2016, right around June 1st or 2nd. I think June 5th. Can't remember exactly. It was one week. It was very soon after Memorial Day, because we were not able to get the final inspection before Memorial Day, which we wanted to do, and we got it the day after, and then started producing as soon as the inspector left. So, okay. You know, we had kids at the time, so we arranged with their schools to do fundraisers for the PTOs, and so suddenly we had business. That's how we got the word out the first summer. It was right at the end of the school year. We bought a small truck, used, and we had a mobile gelato cart, and we started going to farmers markets, and we sold hardly any gelato at farmers markets. So we kept trying, but farmers markets just are not a great environment for selling gelato. I probably mentioned this more later. I have a whole thing on farmers markets because the farmers markets have been good to us, and we've learned an awful lot. We just didn't learn a lot about gelato.